On April 26, 2025, the world bid farewell to a deeply beloved spiritual leader as Pope Francis was laid to rest in Vatican City. His funeral, held in the grandeur of St. Peter's Square, was a moment not just for Catholics but for people across faiths, nations, and ideologies to reflect on a man whose papacy transcended the traditional bounds of the Church. The gathering brought together a remarkable array of global dignitaries, from political figures to royalty, united in grief and respect for the Pope who had dedicated his life to compassion, justice, and humility. In the shadow of the towering basilica that had been the center of his religious leadership, the funeral became not just a ritual of mourning but a profound celebration of a life that changed the moral tone of the 21st century. What made this funeral especially significant was the visible convergence of ideologically opposed figures paying tribute side by side. Former U.S. President Donald Trump, seated near current President Joe Biden, marked a striking image of bipartisan respect. Despite their political rivalry and stark differences, both leaders set aside their positions to honor a man who had spoken truth to power, often challenging world leaders to act with greater humanity. Trump, accompanied by his wife Melania, was seen nodding in contemplation during the homily, while Biden, a devout Catholic, appeared visibly moved, occasionally bowing his head in prayer. That these two prominent figures shared space in solemn unity highlighted the unifying influence Pope Francis wielded over divided societies. From across the Atlantic, the British royal family was represented by Prince William, standing in for King Charles III, who was unable to travel due to health issues. William's presence symbolized the long-standing respectful relationship between the Vatican and the Crown. He joined the procession quietly, his demeanor reserved but reverent, embodying the British monarchy's recognition of the Pope's global importance. Alongside him, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer represented the UK government, his speech prior to the ceremony describing Francis as a moral compass in a chaotic world. Leaders from Europe and Latin America were prominent among the attendees. French President Emmanuel Macron and First Lady Brigitte Macron stood shoulder to shoulder with Spain's Queen Letizia, offering a rare moment of royal and republican unity. Argentina's president arrived with a visibly emotional delegation, given that Pope Francis was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires. The deep pride mixed with sorrow among the Argentinians present was palpable, a reflection of the Pope's journey from the barrios of Buenos Aires to the highest office in the Catholic Church. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni addressed reporters with teary eyes, calling him our moral voice, our father, our friend. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also attended the funeral, creating a moment of reflection on Pope Francis's consistent advocacy for peace amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. His quiet conversation with Donald Trump, though brief, was noted by media observers, perhaps hinting at shared concerns over the future of the conflict. As the camera panned across the vast crowd, glimpses of spiritual leaders from different faiths added to the gravity of the occasion. A rabbi from Jerusalem, an imam from Istanbul, and Buddhist monks from Thailand all took part in the interfaith vigil that preceded the main service, emphasizing the Pope's bridge-building legacy. The funeral mass was led by Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, Dean of the College of Cardinals, who at 91 symbolized the living memory of the Church's recent history. His sermon was a moving reflection on Francis's commitment to the poor, the marginalized, and the misunderstood. He recounted anecdotes from the Pope's unannounced visits to migrant camps, homeless shelters, and prisons. Many in the crowd wiped away tears as Cardinal Re recalled Pope Francis washing the feet of refugees and embracing HIV patients, gestures that defined his papacy's radical empathy. It was this pastoral approach, rather than doctrinal rigidity, that made him a spiritual father to many, regardless of religious affiliation. The symbolism of the funeral was rich and deliberate. The coffin was carried not by cardinals or military guards, but by a group of poor individuals chosen by Francis himself in his final will. Among them were a Syrian refugee, a homeless man from Rome, and a single mother from the Philippines. Their tearful procession through the square marked one of the most powerful moments of the day. The act was a testament to the Pope's unwavering solidarity with the disenfranchised. When the coffin was placed in front of the altar, silence fell across the square, broken only by the chimes of church bells echoing across the Vatican walls. Following tradition, the Pope's body was later transported to the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, where he had often gone to pray before and after his major travels. Crowds lined the route, holding photos of Francis and waving white handkerchiefs in a final farewell. Though he will be interred in the Vatican grottos beneath St. Peter's Basilica, this brief stop at his beloved Marian shrine was a touching nod to his personal devotion and humility. The crowd itself was a mosaic of humanity. Pilgrims from Africa, Asia, and Latin America stood side by side with Europeans and North Americans. Nuns, children, veterans, students, and clergy mingled in a scene that reflected the global village Pope Francis championed. Many carried signs reading Gratias, Papa, and Peacemaker. Live streams of the funeral drew millions of viewers around the world, with global landmarks like the Eiffel Tower, Christ the Redeemer, and the Sydney Opera House dimming their lights in tribute. Messages of condolence poured in from international bodies, including the United Nations and the World Health Organization, acknowledging Francis's efforts in addressing global inequality, climate change, and migration. Though he faced criticism during his papacy, sometimes from within the Church for his progressive stances, Pope Francis remained undeterred in his vision of a more merciful and inclusive Church. His legacy includes groundbreaking encyclicals on the environment, historic apologies to indigenous communities, and tireless support for interfaith dialogue. As the College of Cardinals prepares to enter conclave to elect his successor, the world watches with bated breath, hopeful that the next pontiff will build upon the foundation laid by a man who dared to lead with love rather than law. The funeral of Pope Francis was more than a ceremonial end to a papacy. It was a global meditation on kindness, moral courage, and the power of humility in leadership. His final message, echoed not in words but in the lives he touched, will likely resonate for generations to come. In an age so often dominated by cynicism and division, Pope Francis stood as a rare figure of integrity and hope, and on that solemn day in April, the world paused not just to mourn, but to give thanks.